Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, of course. You can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk about EUBANK JR and Liam Williams, a fight I firmly expect to be a barn burner. You know, we'll start off with Liam Williams. And Williams is a really good fighter. He can get on the back foot. He can get on the front foot too and be aggressive. He carries a little bit of pop. He throws that jab from quite a high guard, so it's difficult to read. It can be quite a straight jab, and he likes to come in behind that jab. And when he's on the inside, he can whip in some short, powerful right hands, as well as a really nice low left hook to the body. And so he's a handful, Liam Williams, and we saw him against Demetrius Andrade. He gave him all he could handle. And Andrade is, of course, a world-class fighter. So we know that he can hang at that level. We know that he's in that world-class sort of area. When he fought Liam Smith, you saw the ability in the first fight of him to get on the back foot and box, and he'll make you fall short and lead you into powerful shots. However, that particular fight, while he was ahead and he was winning the fight and he looked really good early on, and Liam Smith, who's a terrific pressure fighter, began to grate on him and wear him down a little bit. And there was a clash of heads later on in the fight, and he said he couldn't see anymore. He had double vision, I believe, causing the cut or whatever it was, and they ended up calling the fight. Now, the referee incorrectly deemed it to have been a punch rather than a clash of heads, and that led to the fight going to Liam Smith instead of going to the scorecards. Immediately, a rematch was called. Smith genuinely won the second fight. In what was a very good fight as well. And so a lot of people felt that Liam Williams quit in that first fight. And Chris EUBANK Jr. alluded to this in The Gloves Are Off. He called him a quitter. And Liam Williams said, what are you talking about? Who have I ever quit against? And he said, you know who you quit against. You're going to quit again, basically. And so it's something that's been there in his mind. And I just want to draw attention to this discussion because from a psychological perspective, it's important to understand what can happen to a particular fighter if he's deemed to have quit in the past. And this is important because of the change in style of Liam Williams since that point, right? This also applies to people like Daniel Dubois, by the way, potentially Billy Joe Saunders if he decides to come back. There was a study, a famous, very famous study on classical conditioning from a Russian scientist called Pavlov. He had a dog. And what he did was bring food to the dog. And every time he would bring him food, he would also ring a bell. And what would happen is that the dog would associate the food with the ringing of the bell, or rather the other way around. He would associate the ringing of the bell with the presentation of food. And so what would happen, obviously, the dog is being brought this lovely plate of food, great smells that he loves, the taste. Eventually, the food stopped coming out, but the bell would still ring at the same time in the day. And the dog would salivate. There was no food, there was no smell, there was no taste. But the dog would salivate because his mind had been conditioned now to associate food and eating food that he enjoyed with the sound of this bell. So what happens is that your emotions start to associate with specific variables, specific triggers, okay? And this is how conditioning works. You can be conditioned, people can be conditioned to do an awful lot of things that they may not have thought they would have been capable of doing, or their personalities might change as a result of classical conditioning. Now, let's consider this from the perspective of a quit. When a fighter is in the midst of a fight, he is under incredible stress. He's really having it put under him. He's under a lot of pain. From a physical perspective, if it's getting difficult, he may not want to be there. He may hang in there because he's got heart and he's thinking of the end result and that warrior spirit comes through and he's thinking of the reward. But from a physical perspective, nobody likes to be out of breath while they're getting punched in the stomach. Nobody likes to be getting caught with big shots in the head. It's not an enjoyable thing to experience. But they do it because they feel that by overcoming those obstacles, they can achieve something which will bring them even greater reward. In the midst of that extreme stress, in the midst of that punishment, if a fighter quits, one of two things happens. First and foremost, the first point is that the fight ends. So that stress, that pain is taken away. So you immediately stop being chased around the ring and stop being hit. How do you face that thing emotionally? If you're called a quitter, he quit, he jacked it in, he's a quitter, and you are accepting of it, and you think, you know what, it was such a nightmare for me, this idea that I could quit. My word, I'd be called a coward, but actually, it hasn't affected me that much. Who cares what these people think? It then will become easier, potentially, for you to quit, because what happens is emotionally, you will associate the reward of ending the stress you were under, that pain, ending it, with the relief of, I'm out the ring now, I'm safe, I'm cool, I can relax. And the consequences of that aren't a big deal. On the other hand, if you are so disgusted at yourself for quitting, if you are so angry at yourself for allowing yourself to be in that position, the experience of being called a quitter could be worse than the stress that you were exposed to. It could haunt you, in which case you become conditioned to hate the idea of even quitting. Now, in that scenario, your entire style of how you conduct yourself can change. You can become a lot more aggressive. You can become front foot heavy. You want to prove that you're the alpha male, and you will never quit again because you cannot handle the pain that you were put through. Now, a lot of people will say, Tyson Fury would say, if you jack it in once, you'll always jack it in. But a lot of boxers got into boxing precisely because they accepted things that they would not be willing to accept now. Oscar De La Hoya, George Kambosos, a variety of others, they were bullied as kids. George Kambosos was bullied for being a fat kid. Now, there would have been times when Oscar De La Hoya, Kambosos, whoever else, would have been up against school bullies, and they would have been talking down to them, mugging them off, cussing them, maybe even pushing them around a little bit, getting physical. And they had the opportunity to stand up for themselves. And instead they bit their tongue. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they were whatever. They lacked the confidence. They looked down. They walked away. That feeling of what they would feel afterwards when they would go home, that rage that it would produce would lead them to say, I'm going to learn how to fight. And I will never yield to another man again. I will never let another man put me through this again. So it's not necessarily a case of once you quit, you always quit. It could actually spark something within you that changes you as a human being. It can make you think, I will never let myself be that person again because I couldn't look myself in the mirror. To another guy, he might think, you know what, it's not the biggest of deals. Malik Scott speaks quite openly about how he's quit in the past. And he'll be saying, yeah, listen, I put in a pretty shameful performance against Luis Ortiz. It wasn't my best. And he'll laugh about it and then move on. Because in his mindset, listen, I was a world-class heavyweight. Who's going to laugh at me? Gary from Dagenham, who's like a plumber? What's he going to say? Put me in a ring with him, I'll smash him up inside 5 seconds. As if I'm going to care what he thinks. So it depends on each individual. So for him, for Malik Scott, when he's getting smashed up by Luis Ortiz, Derek Chisora, Deontay Wilder, all these people that he's been in with, all of a sudden quitting doesn't seem like the biggest of deals. Well, I don't need to accept this massive pain. I'm going to take my payday and go home. I don't care what other people think. So your mind can go either way. Well, Liam Williams, if only he knows if he genuinely quit, only he knows. If he quit, that might explain why, if he hated himself afterwards and couldn't live with himself, because he is a very aggressive sort of character, he might have said to himself, I will never let this happen again. I can't believe I tried to be smart and tactical in the way I won that fight, trying to find a way to get out of it. I can't accept that. I can't accept the fact that some people don't think I'm a warrior. So now I'm going to be aggressive. Now I'm always going to look for knockouts, front foot heavy. I'm going to trash talk guys when I'm knocking them out. I'm going to become mean, right? Maybe that's what happened with Liam Williams. Well, in this particular fight, if Liam Williams is going to beat Chris EUBANK Jr., he's going to have to let go of that, in my humble opinion. He's going to have to be tactical. Now, this is not to say he cannot hang with Chris inside the pocket, but Chris EUBANK, his whole game is his fighting ability in the pocket. He's got very, very fast hands, and one thing he doesn't get credit for, he's got great agility in his hips. And what he'll tend to do when he's on the inside, if he's going to slip to the side, he will slip and throw a looping hook as he's slipping to the side and then come back with one. If you're chest to chest, he'll roll back at the hip to create space to throw an uppercut through the middle, through the pipe. And when he does that, he could launch off 3 or 4 uppercuts. He's got that fantastic rotational agility in his hips to be able to do that. So when you're in that pocket against Chris EUBANK, the flurries of punches can be incessant. They can come from angles that are coming from around your guard, even up close, angles you're not necessarily thinking about, from landing on behind your ear and things like that. And then if you're only worried about shots coming from the side, that's when he can shorten it up and go through the middle. So it's a frenetic assault that comes from a variety of angles, and it's fast, and he's got a great engine, so it doesn't stop. That's his weapon. That's who Chris EUBANK is. At range, Chris isn't the best fighter necessarily. If you go back and watch the Marcus Morrison fight, for example, you'll see there's a lot of posturing. And you see that now as well with Roy Jones. And one of the reasons he's posturing is because he's not that confident at chasing you down and closing the range on you. One of the things he'll often do that is leap in with a hook, a left hook from low. He'll just leap in. What he ultimately wants you to do, leap in, catch you with a hook, you stay in the pocket, and then he starts to exchange. So what he tends to do is get a little bit on the back foot or posture and try to lure you in. As you get in, he wants to punch with you. You're going to throw a jab, I'm going to throw a hook. You're going to throw one, you're going to jump inside, you're going to come in behind that jab the way Liam Williams likes to do. Cool. As you step in, I'm going to throw a flurry of my own, and I'm going to start punching with you. And I'm going to get you in this little grinding machine, and I'm going to grind you down and wear you out, basically. I'm going to turn you into mincemeat. That's Chris Eubank's mentality. So what you need to do with Chris is take that pocket away from him. You need to make him come to you. You need to get him constantly resetting. If he use a lot of feints, if he's going to be jumping in, leaping in to try and close that range on you, make it desperate. So that have a little lean back so that he falls short, catch him with a shot, but don't overcommit to that shot. Because even if you land that first shot, he's got a great chin, Chris, and a lot of heart. You're going to land that first shot and now you're in an exchange. What you want to be doing is landing that shot, getting back out. He will then throw a second shot. In that second phase of attack, you're gonna dodge that as well, potentially. If you're constantly sort of in and out, not letting him dictate the range, you land a second shot. That one can be with more ferocity and more force. Then you pivot out. The point is you don't want to be in that pocket. Well, Liam Williams is going to have to box like he did against Liam Smith in the first fight if he's going to have that success against Chris Eubank. Now, in fairness to Liam Williams, when he is on the inside, he does throw sometimes a nice little uppercut to the solar plexus, and he can throw that left hook around the guard to the body. So he's not a bum on the inside, and he does hit harder than Chris Eubank. I believe he hits harder if you're talking about a single shot. This is something that Adam Booth has also said. Adam Booth, of course, has a vested interest here, but he's felt both of them on the pads, and he's happy to talk about what he believes Williams is better at and what he believes Chris Eubank is better at, even though he won't give a tactical game plan, which is understandable. The point is, though, he can potentially hang with Eubank at points on the inside, especially because he can also throw an uppercut. So he too can go around or through the middle. And because Eubank's shots, when he's not throwing an uppercut and he's throwing hooks, which is what he tends to prefer to throw, because they've got a loop on them, you can throw inside the arc of those shots. And the right hand of Liam Williams is best delivered when it's a straight right hand. So he's going to want to protect from the right hand in particular, but when Eubank's looking to throw that left hook, he may look to throw from a high guard because he likes to throw from straight from that position there and really launch into it from there. This could potentially protect his chin from a wide hook that's coming. Okay, so he will land first. The problem is, because Eubank's shots have that loop on them, he could still be getting caught on the top of the head. And what we saw against Demetrius Andrade, who is better than Eubank, by the way, but what we saw from Demetrius Andrade is those looping shots were causing Liam Williams a lot of problems. Because Liam, when he's not coming in behind that high guard, behind the jab, he does have those earmuffs on. And he's coming in with that straight high guard. And there isn't much lateral head movement. So he's quite a sort of stationary target coming inside. Well, this leaves you open to the uppercut through the middle. And when a shot is looping around the side, it's going to come around the guard, which is what Eubank's brilliant at. So Liam Williams is going to have to be able to be in and out quickly, not wanting to really stay in the pocket too much. If he's able to make Eubank frustrate him, make Eubank launch in with these big hooks and take a step back, a lean back, then come back in with a straight right hand, he could start to catch Eubank on the back of the ear. He could start to time him in that way and land big shots and start to really affect Eubank potentially. We know Eubank's got a terrific chin, but Liam Williams can pop. And if he can do this consistently, he can start to build up a lead. The problem is, because he likes to step in with that left jab, and sometimes he can smother his own work, as he did against Demetrius Andrade because he was getting frustrated, he could then fall into the wheelhouse of Eubank. So this is a fight that genuinely could go either way based on who gets their tactics right, in my humble opinion. It's one of those. Eubank doesn't have the upper body movement at range. He does up close, that little roll back that I'm talking about to generate space for the uppercut. But that thing where he leans back almost behind his back foot and he's launching that long jab out there that still has reach, the way Andre does, Eubank doesn't do that. He doesn't have that as part of his game. He does sort of bend down to the right sometimes and step out, and that can be effective in avoiding a flurry of punches. But he's not always in a position where he can counter you and come back with a shot of his own. He'll step back, face to the side almost, and step back, take a couple of steps back, and he gets out of range. Andrade will be in a position where as he's moving and shifting areas and positions, he's throwing punches. So you think, okay, I've got him in a bad position here. He'll then change his angle. He'll pivot his feet, change his stance when he's in the pocket and sort of ducked. And as he's doing that, he throws a big shot. Eubank doesn't really have that, and he's not as rangy. Andrade also has the ability to throw longer, straighter shots, that right hand, and really cause problems. He did drop Liam Williams with a straight 1-2. that's not really Eubank's game. He doesn't really have much of a straight right hand, whether that's because of the tennis elbow he had or whatever, who knows. But the point is, there are things that Liam Williams is going to find easier to get off against Eubank than he did against Andrade. But there are elements to Eubank's game which aren't too dissimilar to Andrade's. See what I'm saying? So this is a terrific fight. I genuinely think it's a 50-50 fight that could go either way. If I had to guess, I would say that if Liam Williams makes it to the end of the fight, to the final bell, he could very well do this. I think there's going to be times, though, where he's under incessant pressure. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting stopped, because when he was being caught at times with these flurries of shots from Andrade, because he has that high guard, his defensive mechanisms, when his feet aren't involved, weren't really to sort of deflect a shot, get his head off of center line. He'll tie up if he can. But if his legs go at any point, he's not amazing really at being in that survival mode. And I'm wondering, with, Williams used to be a light middleweight, Chris Eubanks operated at super middleweight, is there going to be some sort of natural size difference in a 12-round fight where the incessant punishment that Eubank can dish out could wear down Liam Williams? There is the Adam Booth factor. Adam Booth used to train Chris Eubank Jr., of course. I know Eubank's saying, I'm a completely different fighter now. There are certain habits and certain strengths and weaknesses that a fighter carries with him through his career. Adam Booth's going to know how to exploit those things. Whether he's had long enough with Williams, whether Williams is good enough to be able to take all this on board. He has changed a whole bunch of different trainers. Who knows how adaptable he is? Remains to be seen. But yeah, let me know what you think about everything we've spoken about. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.